Good morning, everybody. I've been told by many people this morning I have to talk slowly. So, you may only get half of my presentation. We will see. We will see how it goes. Okay, so I've been asked to look at quality education generally, but also to look at what we do in Ireland. So that's what I'm going to try and cover in the next 30 minutes. So I suppose the first questions I'm looking at, what is it, and do parents' views matter? And we're going to explore those concepts throughout the next few slides. So I was looking for a definition of quality education, and there are many. So I decided to settle on the United Nations, as they are a reputable body. And they have said that inclusive and equitable quality education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all is the fundamental of quality education, that these are the things, after having done much work, they've decided is the cornerstone of quality education. I don't know what people's view to that is. Does that sound right? Is it something people can be happy with? Okay, we will continue and go into more detail. But before we start looking at education, I think we need to start thinking, what does quality mean to us? If we only see it in terms of education sometimes, we can finish up going down tracks and arguments and we forget actually what we're talking about, which is the notion of quality. What does quality mean? And does it mean the same to all people? Okay? So just a little exercise now, seeing as it's early in the morning for some people. So we're staying in a hotel. Let's not think about education for a minute. When we're thinking of a quality hotel, when you're thinking about that, do you think of the room? For me, the quality of the hotel is the room is really, really important. What accessories I get? Do I get the little bottles of shampoo and are they good? Are they good quality? Is it a nice, comfortable bed? Do I have a menu for my pillows? That was new to me, for people staying in this hotel. Is that the thing that I think of when I think about a quality hotel? Or do I think about the really important thing? I know it's going to be a good hotel if it's got a really good spa, that you can get all the treatments, there's a nice gym, there's a lovely swimming pool, it looks really exclusive, then I know it's going to be a good hotel. Or do I want a hotel that's got a Michelin star restaurant? Do I now know that that's a good quality hotel? So let's have a show of hands. Who thinks it's a bedroom? Okay. Who thinks it's a spa? Okay. And who thinks it's a Michelin star restaurant? You can only have one. You can only have one. So even when we're talking about quality hotels, we can't all agree what is the quality in a hotel, okay? So now we've identified the idea that quality isn't fixed. It depends on the personal experience and what the person is looking for, okay? So when we go back to the United Nations definition, this is one view of what quality education is. But it isn't a defined definition. That sounds a bit odd. But it isn't. It is not the truth. It is a definition in a period of time that will change over time. Okay? So it's just to try and start thinking about the fact that when we talk about quality, and we go on to talk about results in exams and what part they play in quality, when we go on to talk about extracurricular activity, it is all our own different opinions of what we value in education. It's not the same, okay? So we just need to keep that in our mind when we're talking about quality. It is not a fixed position. So we're going to do a little quick survey now on what is quality for you as individuals in education. Let's get on to the topic I'm supposed to be talking about, and not hotels. So, a child-centred happy school, is that the most important thing for you when you think of quality? Focus on a whole school community relations. All your voices are included, and the child's, and the teachers, and all the school staff. Focus on academic achievement. Is that the most important thing to you in quality? Focus on arts and sports and all those other extracurricular activities. Or promoting faith, values and beliefs of the child and the family. Is that what represents a quality school to you? So let's go first. Who can only put your hand up once? I noticed some people doing it twice last time. Child-centered, happy school. Okay. Focus on the whole school community relations. Okay. Focus on academic achievement. Okay. Focus on arts and sports. Okay, a few hands there. And promoting faith, values and beliefs of the child and family. Lots of people want to put their hands up, but you have to pick your favourite. So when we're talking about quality education, we have quite a split in this room. And yet we all see ourselves as a homogenous group that are here talking about the same things in education, but we're not. We are, because we're all talking about all of these things, okay? But we all have different, slightly different priorities in what we're talking about when we're talking about a quality education. And these are really fundamentally important things when we say we want a quality system of education in our country. Because, well, what does that look like and what does it mean? And when we talk about international best practices, you're now transferring values, cultures, beliefs across different countries and saying we want a best practice for the whole world in education. So it gets more complicated because we might take something from another country, and I'm going to go through with you what we do shortly. You might take something from another country, but it won't fit with your system. It won't fit with what you value in your country. And even within your country, it won't fit with everybody. So quality isn't a fixed position. And again, we need to think of this constantly when we're talking about quality. By the way, I don't have an answer at the end of this presentation, just in case you're waiting for it. I don't have an answer. I'm just posing lots of questions. Okay. So this is a quality definition that's not education, okay? Which I particularly like because I think it better describes the transaction of looking at quality. So quality is an abstract and it's a relational attribute, okay? So it's not a known fact, it's abstract, it doesn't exist, and it's about relationships, okay? So virtually anything can be assessed, and one of the questions I was asked when I was doing this presentation was, can teachers be assessed? Can we quality assess teachers? And everything can be assessed. We just need to find the agreed way we assess them. Because if you're assessing them about whether your child is happy in the school and ready to learn, and somebody else wants to assess them on their test results, it's not going to work the same way. So can everything be assessed? Yes, but we have to really start to work out what are the assessment parameters and what are we measuring, because that is fundamental, and then agreeing what is quality is fundamental to that. So such assessments being made against accepted standards, accepted by who? But they have to be accepted. We have to understand when we're saying something's quality that we all understand what those standards are and that we buy into them. And this is fundamental to parent choice. So why does a parent choose that school over that school? Because they feel that their standards are being better met in one school than another. So that accepted standards is just a very short phrase, but it takes a long time to get there. And it's against the interest of relevant stakeholders. So who are the relevant stakeholders in quality? And that's always moving, because relevant stakeholders often are weighted against whether they're saying the same thing as the person who's deciding what the quality is. So we all want to hear children's voices, but if they're not saying the things that the adults want to hear, we might temper them a little bit, and we might give them a bit of nuance in what they're saying, because they're not. If we want to all hear parents' voices, but actually we decide, but that's just not doable what parents are asking, it's not realistic. So we always have an interpretation of a voice based on the person who's making the decision on what the quality standards are going to be. So That relevant stakeholder bit, again, is important, because when you're talking to relevant stakeholders, before you talk to them, not afterwards when you hear what they say, before you talk to them, you have to be clear about the level of recognition that voice is going to have in how you develop your quality standards. So you'd often hear people say, well, we consult, but it doesn't mean to say that we're going to take everything on board. Now, if you hear that, at least somebody's being honest. But it also means that they will consult you, and if they can accommodate you in what they think, they will. But if they can't, then often that is not doable. But that quality definition to me makes more sense, because it's a moving, it's in relation to the people who are involved in the quality approach, the quality view, the stakeholders involved in recognising what is quality. So this, for me, I think is more useful in education than specifying exactly that it's inclusive. That assigns a state of being to education for a particular point of time. If you're in a system and you're working on these, if you're in a school and you're working on this definition, then you're willing to accept that it's ever moving and ever changing with the different stakeholders that you're dealing with. Any comments or questions yet? I know we're going to do questions this afternoon, but I can take little bits along the way if you want, because I'm not talking that slowly. Can everybody understand me? Yeah. Okay, that's a good start. That's a good start. Okay, so what the research says that impacts quality. So the first column over here, Sadker et al. Says that there's 5 things that impact quality. There's quality leadership. So quality needs to be led in schools. It needs to be led in a school, and it needs to be led at a national level. We need to have high expectations of students and teachers to have quality. We need ongoing screening of student performance and development. So that's all the testing and seeing how they're developing through, and I think there's going to be more on that from other speakers this morning. Need to have goals and direction. If we don't know what we're aiming for, then how can we be going in the same way? And we have to have safety and security for students. So students need to feel safe, and it goes back to that kind of happy piece in school to be able to learn. So that's what Sadker et al. Says. Dobie et al., which were a group of Harvard researchers, which always makes it seem more important when you say Harvard, but we'll see. They say that frequent teacher feedback is really important for the students. The use of data to guide instruction, so again it's that testing piece. High dosage tutoring, so that's more one-to-one and small groups of students. Increased instructional time, so longer in school, longer classes. And high expectations. They weren't specific about that being for teachers as well. They were generally talking about student expectations. So there's some crossover there, but there's quite a bit of difference as well. So let's do show of hands again. First group, Sadker et al. Who likes those 5 best? I'll give you a few seconds to consider them. Okay, who likes the first column first? People are starting to put their hands up. So do you want to raise your hand if you like the first column best? Okay, who likes the second column best? I'd say maybe about 2/3 to 1/3. So again, even in this room, we can't agree on what we like about quality. And we're constantly, parents should be consulted. This is the dilemma that people have when they consult, because different things, and it can quite often just be one line in those that make us go to one or the other. Just something hits our values. Quality is so value driven. We think of it as tests and exams, but it's actually very value driven. Because if you're constantly approaching the results of exams and studying, you have a particular value about your child's education. If you're saying, look, just go and do your best, I know you'll do your best, that's a different type of value to saying, I expect you to have an A. So we're value driven all the time. So this is something to consider when we consider measuring quality. Value what we measure, or measure what we value. It's a common saying, isn't it? And it's often thrown at us, actually. What should we do? Well, I wondered when I saw this why there was a box of eggs in the picture, because I just wanted to put this up and I was Googling a picture to go with it. And it's actually only yesterday evening when I was looking at it again that I thought, I know why there's a box of eggs there, because what came first, the chicken or the egg? Because you have to decide what you value first and then you start measuring it. But I think sometimes with quality what we do is we accept the things we're going to measure rather than we decide on the things that we're going to measure. So we measure this because we've always measured it. And then we decide, well, maybe we won't put too much weight on it because we know it's really impacting children and students' mental health and well-being. It's really impacting, and maybe it's not important in their life because actually we're seeing more and more that some things aren't as important. But we still keep measuring it. And once we're measuring it, we can't say it doesn't matter. So we have a real difficulty in Ireland at the moment because for many years we've had two state exams, one that's called the junior certificate, which they do at the middle of high school education, and one at the end called the leaving certificate. They have always been high stakes because they're state exams, okay? So any state exam that goes outside to be marked has a high stakes value. They're both high stakes because at one stage a lot of children used to leave school after the junior certificate. Now in Ireland, no child leaves school after the junior certificate. So it doesn't need to be high stakes anymore. But trying to remove it from the state examination system has been impossible. The teacher unions fight for it to be a high stakes exam, and there's no way we could mark this because it's a state exam. Children need to have experienced a high stakes exam before they actually do a high stakes exam. So there's all these arguments because of this concern about change in the system. It's not about quality. It's not about what we want. It's not about what matters, because the junior certificate doesn't matter at all. But we still keep measuring it. And if we keep measuring it, we can't tell children and parents not to value it. So it's actually quite a brave thing to do to approach quality and change things under the quality heading. Because some people see the junior certificate in Ireland as a really good quality measure of how children are doing. Others think it puts pressure on them at a point in their lives they just don't need pressure, and it doesn't really tell you anything. So, what do we do? What do we measure? What do we value? So I think it's an interesting thing to look at, but we do need to look at what we measure and have to be brave enough to make those changes when we need to, and not think the whole world is going to fall apart. And actually, COVID has shown us that the whole world doesn't fall apart when we make changes. And we were very excited in Ireland because we have very difficult summative exam pressures on students, and we've been trying to change it for many, many years. And we were very excited during COVID that actually COVID showed that the world didn't fall apart when children didn't go in and do exams. And they did manage to get into university, and they did manage to continue on in education. And the world just didn't fall apart. And we thought, well, now we know it doesn't fall apart. Maybe this will be exciting in reform. We will wait and see. But change is very, very difficult. And often, this is another piece that's become very clear in Ireland around change and quality. Often, I've been looking at this, but I think I should be looking at something else for my time, sorry. Often, when people say, the problem with change is parents don't want it. Have you heard that? Yes. In Ireland, it is regular. We want to change exams, but parents want it to stay the same. The difficulty with that is they often ask the parents whose children are just about to take the exam, do you want to change it? No. If you ask the children of parents in primary school, do you want to change the leaving certificate for your child when they get there, unanimously they all say yes. But if you ask the parents of children who are just about to do it, they want it to stay the same, because they worry about the risk of something changing for their experimented on it with their children and the impact that will have. So again, we need to look at who we're asking when we're talking about quality systems as well. Because if we're asking people who have a huge risk if there's change versus people who may not be as much risk, we get different answers. So we need to look at that as well. Okay, so let's see. So in Ireland, I'll go on to a little bit about what we do in Ireland. So we have a very embedded quality system. It's very formal, and everybody knows it happens. It's from our inspectorate in our Department of Education, so we have a whole team across the country of inspectors that go into schools. It is changing quite dramatically over the years, so I'll talk a little bit about that. So inspections, we have 3 types of inspections. We have a whole school inspection. A school gets some warning that a whole school inspection is going to happen. It used to be about a month that they got warned, and what happened is no teaching and learning happened in that school for a month, whilst the school got everything perfect for the inspection. It was a bit like the Pope coming, or the Queen, doing the painting on the walls and everything. All the policies were being written, they were all being put in, so the children were the last thing being thought about, because children had to learn new songs for the inspector. It was crazy. So what they did was that they cut down the notice period and said, we don't expect everything to be perfect. We want you to have a little bit of time so that you're not looking for something when we ask for it, but if you haven't got something, then we accept that, and that's part of what we're inspecting. Then we have, miss the middle bit for a minute, then we have management, leadership and learning. Sorry, the whole school is a week in the school. The inspector spends a week in the school. The management, leadership and learning is a shorter inspection. It's usually 2 to 3 days, and it doesn't go into classrooms, but it looks at the management of the leadership and the learning in the school. So how that is managed within a school system, how classes are allocated, how children who are struggling might be supported, what the principal does and how the head teacher manages the school. So that's all looked at, but the inspectors aren't going into the classrooms. And then we have incidental inspections. In Ireland, they call these drive-by inspections, akin to drive-by shootings, I think, but that's how the schools see them. So an inspector drives by and they pull in, and no warning, nothing. And the idea of that, from the inspectorate point of view, is we want to see you how you are. We're not going to stay for very long. We're going to stay maybe half a day, but we want to see you how you are. And so people have got more used to them. At the beginning, there was a lot of anger about the incidental inspections, but people have got more used to them now. They see the feedback they get as being constructive. They don't have their concerns aren't lived out, so that they still don't like them. Nobody likes inspections, but they live with them. In the whole school evaluation, that's the biggest evaluation, parents, teachers and children are consulted. So teaching and learning is observed, but also teachers can feed into the inspectorate through surveys. Parents are all surveyed in the school, and children are all surveyed in the school. Parents also, if there's a parent association in the school that is affiliated to us, then they also get met by the inspectorate and have a meeting with the inspectorate. The reason that they have to affiliate with us is because to affiliate with us, you have to have certain standards, and it's clear that you're following a proper parent association, where some schools might have a friends of the school group and it might have past parents on it, very few current parents. So that's why they have to affiliate with us, to show that they are working effectively and along guidelines. So that's the piece on that. So these are the type of inspections we have, and whole school was the predominant inspection, and now it is becoming more kind of the management, leadership and learning, more advisory inspections. So particularly around COVID, after COVID ended, inspectors went in to advise and support schools. Now they were still seeing what was going on, but they were making sure that their role was advisory. So in the last, I'm guessing now, but probably about 10 years, school self-evaluation has come into Ireland. Again, it was something that was very negatively seen at the beginning, but now is very much embraced. And I think it has reformed quality in schools. I'd go as far as to say that. I think it has reformed quality in schools, because what it has done in a very systematic approach, it hasn't just said to schools, and I'm going to talk about it on the next slide, hasn't just said, do you think yourself what you do and report back on it to people? It's given a very clear system of how schools have to approach school self-evaluation. But it involves schools looking at themselves and involves schools talking to their parents and their students and saying, what are the important things for us in this school? What are the values that drive us as a school? That's a very different thing to an inspector coming past and saying, where are your policies on this? Where's your child protection policies? I'm going to observe a teacher teaching and learning. Very, very different process. And it engages schools in looking at quality themselves from their own perspective and their whole school community perspective. This is how they do it. The 6 steps. So the first step is that they gather evidence. The second step, they analyze. That gathering evidence is with teachers, students, and parents. So everybody, it's the surveying. They sometimes will do focus groups in the school. So they gather the evidence. I'm happy to share this presentation. I should have said it before, but the camera's going up. Happy to share the presentation. Then they analyse and make judgments on that evidence, because you have to make judgments. You have to make judgments on what you want to improve, because you can't improve everything all at once. So what are the important things to us as a school community? I'm going to have to put my glasses on now with the black and red. Sorry. They write and share the report and improvement plan. So obviously when you've decided what you're going to do, you have to document it. It has to be transparent. People need to know when they were consulted what the outcome of that consultation is. And if the consultation is that something needs to be improved, that needs to be shared. Schools don't have to seem perfect to parents and children. That's a really bad message, that we're perfect and nothing needs improving. It's a really bad message for children in terms of learning in life. So they need to share where the negative areas or the needs of improvement are, but also then a plan of how they're going to try and improve that. Then they put the improvement plan into action, and they monitor actions and evaluate the impact. And then the whole thing starts again. So, as you can see on this side, the inspectorates have been developing areas. So there's a lot of backup documentation for schools on this. So if they pick literacy, the inspectorate have developed a whole program around literacy self-evaluation, how they can go about that. So there'll be a checklist of the things that they should ask parents, a checklist of the things they should ask students and teachers, how to gather that, how to look at test results and how to interpret them in terms of evaluation. So there's a step-by-step process for each of these areas. And every couple of years they add another area. So the most recent one was wellbeing and physical education. They added those areas most recently. But they started with literacy and numeracy. So that's our school self-evaluation. I've got 3 minutes, but I'm nearly there. Okay, so just some questions in parents' role, okay? Are parents customers? This is something that we have an argument, I'll go as far as to say an argument all the time about. Are they customers? Who thinks they are? Who thinks they're not? There's a good few don't knows then. There's a good few don't knows. There's a few hands that haven't gone up there. It's really difficult, because if we look at quality in terms of a hotel, the customer drives improvement in a hotel or in a shop or in a business. So there's a real benefit from being a customer to a school. Are children the customers, or are children and parents the customers? You could argue parents, because they have more choice in their purchase as such in terms of education. But if we just see parents and children as customers, we're missing a whole relational piece. But it doesn't mean to say that they're not customers.
We are more users than customers.
Or customers plus, maybe. Because customers drives quality. Outside of education, it drives quality. But then we don't know what we're measuring for quality. So that's what forces schools into exam tables and league tables of schools based on results, because we're not having a discussion about what actually different people value. We're only driving it by exam results. So that makes the customer relationship with education very one-dimensional, but it actually has got a lot of traction. So I don't have an answer, but I think it's something that we need to constantly challenge ourselves with. Are parents customers, or are they something else? and what is it they are, but customers is an important piece because it drives quality. Do parents' values matter when we're looking at quality? But even when you look in this room of what is a very homogenous group, because we all are members of EPA, so we're a very homogenous group, we have seen that we have different values around the top 5 things. So they matter, but how much weight can we give to them? Because every family has slightly different views of what they think is most important. But they do matter, absolutely. What about children's voice? And that's becoming an increasing topic, and something that has been part of my work since I was in my early 20s is children's voice. But again, we have to be very clear about if we're going to ask children, then we need to listen and we need to act. We can't just ask them and say, aren't they lovely drawings? And wasn't it wonderful when that child did that poem? And oh, it's just so heartwarming. Because that's often the things that come out of a children's consultation. But what did they actually say they wanted? And we can't dismiss their views as, well, they're too young to really understand. If we're asking them and they're answering, then we have to take their voice seriously. And what does parent voice matter if it's not listened to on quality? It's a fundamental issue of education, is quality. So why are we fighting for a parent voice if it doesn't matter on quality? So I think it's absolutely the cornerstone of why parent voice is important. So who should be involved? And you might recognise this image from Joyce Epstein's Overlapping Spheres of Influence. If you don't, it's in the presentation so you can see it, but you might look, you can see I'm at the end of my presentation. So what's really important is that the child is always at the centre of any quality conversation, always at the centre. And we can't get caught up in our own relationships and arguments and miss the child in the centre of the conversation. But we need families involved, we need the schools involved, and we also need the community involved. Because if schools act without thinking of where the children are going to after school and whether they're being prepared properly for what is about to come, then we might as well forget schooling. And that's me done.